So we pick up here with the death of Augustus. This is the empire is going to keep rolling on. The Roman Empire. This is the first century from the death of Augustus in 814 AD, and then we'll be going to 96 AD, the first century. And this is actually the family. This will be Julius Caesar's family as rulers. As we mentioned, Augustus, before he died, he named his successor. His successor, Tiberius. This was his stepson. And Tiberius had been in the military. He's considered a military man, not a great military commander, but he'd served in the military. And mainly in the role as administrator. So when he becomes emperor, that's what he's interested in, is administration, the paperwork, going from an army administrator now to an emperor. And that's one thing he likes, is administration. And he is good at it. He pays attention to what he's doing. But personality-wise, he's referred to as a cold fish. People loved Augustus. Tiberius, not so much. And he responded to that lack of interest, their lack of admiration for him. He hated the city. He just grew to despise the city of Rome. He wanted to be outside of Rome. And so he actually does. He will move out of the city of Rome and move his headquarters, his palace, to an island off the coast of Italy, near Naples. The island of Capri will become his headquarters, his private island, where if you want something done, you'll need to go out to this island. The island today is still a tourist resort. It's a very famous, beautiful island. And there are some remains of his palace on the island. You can visit, tourist attraction. As far as strange things go, on his little island, he would surround himself with young boys to bathe with him and swim with him. So kind of a strange guy. And he also was very old when he became emperor, and he'll live 20 years beyond that. So he dies as an old man. For succession, he chose somebody. Before he died, he chose somebody. And he chose a young man named Gaius. And Gaius will become emperor at 24 years old. And you may not be familiar with the name Gaius, but you might be familiar with his nickname. His nickname was Caligula. And this had been a name he'd had as a boy. His father was a great military commander, and so Caligula had been marching around with the soldiers, and Caligula means little boots. And so it was kind of cute nickname for a boy that marched around with the army, and his father, very powerful. He is in Caesar's family, and so they're going to keep this in the family for a while. He is in Caesar's family from the line of Octavian's sister. Now the family tree is kind of confused, and this is going to be kind of down the family tree line here. I'll show you a picture of the family tree and show you how confusing it is. Again, I'll remind you that there were lots of divorces and remarriages, so family trees look like this, a big jumble. Here's Augustus right there, and here's Tiberius. And then Tiberius chooses, way down the family tree here, Gaius, Caligula. And we kind of think that Tiberius might have known what he was doing. He hated Rome so much that one of the quotes, we're not sure how accurate this is, but a quote as he's dying, when he names Caligula emperor, Rome is going to get the snake it deserves now. So maybe he understood what's about to happen, that Caligula mentally is not going to be the right guy for the job. Caligula will be there on the death of Tiberius, and fortunately for everyone, will only be there for about 4 years, from 37 to 41. The first couple of years, again, he's in his 20s here. The first couple of years, the people actually liked him. He spent money everywhere. Tiberius had been kind of a miser, and so there's a huge treasury buildup, and Caligula will spend it the first couple of years. And then the next couple of years, the anger starts to set in. As the parties dry up, people become angry at Caligula, and Caligula becomes angry at them. The insanity. And we're not really sure when it completely sets in, or if it's all true, but pretty much every historian of the Romans will have a list of the crazy things that he does, starting with incest within his family, and then going toward insults to the Senate, violence, proclaiming himself a god, dressing up like gods, holding orgies, taking his army off toward Britain, and at the north shore of the North Sea, collecting seashells as booty. Just the list goes on and on of the crazy things. Having his horse made senator, attacking men's wives, raping them, threatening men with death. Just it goes on until finally his own bodyguards kill him. The death of Caligula will come in 4 short years, 41 AD. His own bodyguards kill him. The Praetorian guards got tired of putting up with him, and he'll be murdered in the palace. And this leaves us a problem here because he never chose anybody. So the problem of succession comes up. And so it'll be the Praetorian guards who choose the next emperor. And they will choose a man named Claudius. They found him hiding in the palace. And he's on the family tree. He's of Caesar's family. And so he is chosen by the guards as the next emperor of Rome, Claudius. Here he is on the family tree. He is Gaius Caligula's uncle. And so we're going back up the family tree a little bit here to get Claudius to be emperor. Emperor Claudius. And this is actually going to be a great thing. From 41 AD to 54, for 13 or 14 years, Emperor Claudius, he was a historian. So really great for us. This man had been hiding in the palace and just practicing history, staying out of Caligula's way. The stories are that he had been feigning mental problems, stuttering and acting mentally handicapped, so that basically Caligula would leave him alone, and it worked. Now that he's emperor, his greatness can show through. He'd been studying history, and he announces projects for Rome. Some of the things he wants done. Some of the problems that Rome has been facing that haven't been fixed. One of them is the port of Ostia. This is what he's going to become famous for. Rome is not a port city, but it's on the Tiber River, and when the Tiber empties into the Mediterranean, we need a port, and he will establish a port of Ostia, make it into a modern port with harbors and warehouses, so that the food can be dropped off there and then shipped into Rome by smaller boats. And it's still there today. If you get a chance to go to Rome, and if you take a ride down the river, you can end up at Ostia and see the warehouses and the docks are still there, because they're made with concrete. So 2,000 years later, the remains of the port are still there. He does some conquest. Again, Roman armies are going to need to be always on the move. The Romans like that. And his conquests are not just going to be random. His conquests are necessary. He's going to make conquest into the Black Sea. If you remember, the Greeks were interested in the Black Sea, and the reason is food. The Black Sea is a very green area with nice black soil, and so the Romans need more food, and the Black Sea will provide the same access that the Greeks had done, food shipments back to Rome. And then he will set his eyes on Britain. Julius Caesar had failed to take Britain. Remember, he made 2 attempts to take the island, but he failed, and so Claudius will organize a conquest of Britain, the invasion of Britain, and he'll get it done. In 43 BC, his troops will land on the island and then work their way north, pushing north from the southern shore up north. And they drive the Britons north. If you're a Briton and you want to be part of the Roman system, you can stay and join the Roman civilization, or they'll just drive you to the north. Just pushing the Britons, the ones that don't want to cooperate, just push them further and further north. This is such a huge thing for Claudius that he even names his son. When he has a son, he will name his son Britannicus in honor of his great conquest, the one that even Julius Caesar couldn't accomplish. By the way, the Romans will hold this island, or most of this island, until the 400s. So for almost 400 years, 350 years or more, the Romans will hold on to this island, or most of this island. And it won't be until the 400s that the Romans will pull away from Britain, when the Germans show up. German tribes will show up in the 400s, landing on the island, and the Romans will just give it up. The problems for Claudius is his personal life. As an historian and a very educated man, he's not going to be great with the women. And his second wife is going to cause him all kinds of trouble. In fact, his demise. His wife's name, second wife's name is Agrippina. She'll go down in history as one of the great evil women of history. And she already had a son, and so Claudius now has a stepson. He has a son, Britannicus, and now he has a stepson named Nero. So Agrippina comes with some baggage. She has a son of her own named Nero. And it just so happens that Nero is 1 year older than Britannicus. And this is going to become important now. The Roman age for succession, being able to succeed your father, is 16. And just as Nero turned 16, as Nero turned 16, Britannicus is still 15, and it's at that point that Claudius meets his end under suspicious circumstances. The history books record poison mushrooms were served to him, and he dies. at a meal, probably by his second wife. So who's the new emperor? Is it Britannicus or Nero? And the answer is Nero, because Nero's old enough to succeed. Britannicus isn't old enough yet. And so for 1 year, Nero and Britannicus are brothers, and then 1 year later, as Britannicus is reaching his age of maturity, 16, he's going to die. Also, under mysterious circumstances, Britannicus dies strangely, probably at the hands of Agrippina again. So your new emperor now, in full, is Nero, and he will rule from 54 to 69, so 15 years of Nero. You'd be rooting for this kid. This kid seems like he's got all the abilities to do what he needs to do. He's Greek educated. He's actually been over to Greece and educated. The Romans are fascinated with the Greek education. He has a great one. Seems very bright. He's an artist. He plays instruments. And so this guy should be a great asset to Rome. He's a Stoic even. This is where we see the Greek philosophy. All the Roman emperors, most of the Roman emperors will be drawn to the Stoic philosophy, the idea that you just accept your fate. And for a Roman emperor, of course, his fate is he's emperor. But everyone needs to accept their place in the world and just accept what happens. Not the most emotional of religions. It's actually going to take emotions out of things. You don't need to be emotional if you're a Stoic. The problem come now that he's emperor is the battles with his mother. His mother has basically established this for him, that she is establishing how he can be the emperor by getting rid of his stepfather, by getting rid of his brother Britannicus. She's basically made him. And so now that he's in power, she seeks power. And the battles rage between the mother and the son. And the boy turns to violence. We have accounts of him being violent, going out with his friends and just attacking people in the streets at night, getting drunk and attacking people. Accounts of him kicking his wife to death for nagging him. And then he turns his attention toward his mother, finally decides to get rid of her, and he'll buy a boat for her on the river. He knew she couldn't swim, and he'll invite her onto this boat. And as the boat sinks, everyone gets off except his mother. And then strangely, she made it to shore. Somehow she makes it to shore, and he'll have his men kill her on shore. So he ends up killing his own mother over this. So we've got a deranged Nero now, starting off with good possibilities and ending with a deranged Nero. The big thing that happens during his reign is a fire breaks out. In 64 AD, a fire engulfs Rome, or most of Rome. And it broke out in a place where he had been talking about a golden palace. He had been planning a golden palace in a spot of Rome, and he picked the spot out, and that's where the fire starts. It burns down that, not only that area, but it's out of control and burns down the entire center of Rome. And the people of Rome accuse Nero of this. The people of Rome will say that Nero did nothing. He planned this fire, that he fiddled while Rome burned because he probably started the fire in the first place. So as people are blaming Nero, Nero hears of this, and he turns the accusations. Don't blame me. He says, blame Christians. He turns the attention toward Christians, that Christians started this fire, this terrorist attack on Rome. Now, again, keep in mind the dates. This is about 30 years after Jesus' crucifixion. Romans don't know much about Christianity, but they might know now or find out about it, and they find out that the leader of the Christians had been crucified by Romans. So it makes sense to them that the Christians might want to burn down Rome. And this opens an open season on Christians. If you're a Christian, you'd better run or you better hide now, because the Romans are going to come after you and kill you for this burning of Rome. By 69, Nero has worn out his welcome, starts to be acting crazy, and his guards will attempt to kill him, and they'll seek to kill him, and he'll end up killing himself. His last words as he dies are, what a loss. The world is losing a great artist. So 69 AD, the year of his suicide, is called the year of the four emperors. There will be Nero, and then there will be two other men who step up and attempt to be emperor, and they'll end up being killed. And then finally, after these two guys, we end up with a general showing up, Vespasian. This happens when there's trouble. A general will establish himself, and this is Vespasian. He's returning from Judea. There had been trouble in Judea, which we'll get to in a second. And Vespasian makes it back to Rome to become the new emperor. And Vespasian starts a new line of emperors. We're done at 69 AD. We are done with Caesar's family. This is a new line called the Flavian emperors. and a whole new line of emperors for Rome. A couple of things to mention during this time, the time period of the Flavians. A couple of big things happen in Rome. One is the opening of the Colosseum. The Colosseum in Rome, the biggest of the big Colosseums, the granddaddy, opens around 80 AD. So the Romans have this master showpiece with all kinds of modern technology in there. And then the other big event is in 79 AD, the city of Pompeii gets buried by a volcano right next door to it that had been smoking, finally explodes and buries the city of Pompeii in ash. So that would have been big news. And that turns out to be great for us because we get to find a buried Roman city later on. But we end there at about 100 or around 96 AD, which is close enough to 100 to say that's the first century of the Roman Empire. We went through Caesar's family, and then we have a family of good, solid emperors, the Flavian family.